Another video about tires? What could possibly be left to say? I'll be back in a minute to tell you. Hi everybody, welcome back to Geezer Rider. In this video we're going to be talking about the Michelin Commander III Touring tires. And there is a distinction between Touring and their other Commander series. If you have a moment while you're watching this video and you decide you like it, please support us by liking it, giving it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of the content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We really appreciate your support in that regard. So the Michelin Commander III Touring tires in general, talk about opening up Pandora's box. So let's just start with the obvious. Tires are everything on your motorcycle. The level of handling you're going to get, the safety you get, the enjoyability of your ride. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole and talk about the dark side, which is putting on car tires or arguing about between brands and everything. I landed on this tire and we're going to go from there. You can, do other tire comparisons between brands and models on your own if you'd like to. There's a ton of videos. And that being said, there's a ton of videos. So why are we bothering to make this video? If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know we usually only make a video when we find that there's information missing from a topic. And the Michelin Commander III Touring, actually the Michelin Commander III in general, Touring or the cruiser version, is actually the subject of a little bit of controversy when you start looking into it. And it really almost put me off of the tire for a little bit, but I did some research and obviously wound up buying them. As you saw just a moment ago, I have them. And again, we're not sponsored by anybody. We pay for all this stuff ourselves. So I went out and bought those Commander tires. This isn't a sponsored video by Michelin or any vendor or anything like that. So if I mention anybody in passing, it's just because that's what the review's about. So why am I getting tires at all? I have a Harley Electra Glide Ultra Classic. It's a 2016. It's a heavy full dress touring bike, and it has currently on it Dunlop American Elites. There's a date code on them that show they were made in August of 2016, so they're just a little over 5.5 years old coming into this riding season. And honestly, they're not too badly worn for their age. The rear tire's a little worn in the center, but still pretty serviceable. But I always do a really close inspection as the spring riding season approaches. I ride all year round, but a lot less during the late fall, winter, and early spring than obviously I do in the late spring, summer, and early fall. So I take a really good look at everything, and one of the things I noticed was just some real slight checking in the sidewall of the tires, especially the front tire. And just decided for where I land from a comfort and safety perspective that it was time to replace them. And those Dunlop American Elites are what we're going to be comparing these Michelins to, just because they're on the bike. I've been living with the tires since I got the bike, and I know how it handles with them on it. So, we're going to have a pretty good A versus B comparison here when we get them mounted. Some of the specs were going to be, I mentioned early, the Commander III series is actually divided into two categories. There is the cruiser category and the touring category. The touring, Michelin Commander III Touring, which is what I bought, is specifically for touring. So it's set up to last longer and assumes that you're going to be riding on the center of the tread. So if the tire is crowned this way, the bottom of the tire, you're going to be riding more upright more often. And that is actually more conducive to my riding style than the cruiser, which is rated for slightly less wear. You're not going to get as much mileage out of the tire overall, as many miles on it overall before it's worn out. But it is made more for hard cornering and such. And that being said, it's not like these tires can't handle, but I'm not doing canyon carving. I'm not constantly testing my lean angle limits. I'm not one of these guys that's not happy unless my, running boards are making sparks. That's just not the kind of riding I do on a normal basis. And when you're buying your tires, you should be buying your tires for what you're doing between 90 and 95% of the time, not what you do 10% of the time. And if 10% of the time what you do is really aggressive, you're either going to have to dial that back to be in line with the tires you bought, or buy a tire that can handle that but might not last as long. So for example, if I really wanted to get on it and turn my Electroglide into a high performance bagger and really bang it around, I might consider the Michelin Commander 3 cruiser tires instead of the Tourers, so I would get allegedly, you know, better traction in the corners and stuff like that. But for the riding I do, from all the research that I've done, the Commander 3 Touring is a perfect fit for me, and that's what we're going to be talking about. This is spring of 2022 right now, and there are supply chain issues, and I actually did have to shop around for a while to find somebody that had both tires in stock, and I'll tell you why I wanted them both at the same time when we get into some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of this research. And the barrier to entry was $220 for the front tire. That's a 130/80 B17. And the rear was $298, and that was a 180/65 B16. I got them online through Cycle Gear, and Cycle Gear has a policy: if you buy something online and you don't want to pay shipping and there's a store near you, they'll ship it to that store for free. When it comes into the store will call you and let you know it's ready for pickup. You go in and you pick it up, and you saved yourself the cost of shipping. So as long as the Cycle Gear store isn't too far away from you, or is on, you know, one of your errand paths or on your way to or from work, etc., you know, that's a great way to go. And I actually kept track of, this was shipped FedEx, so it was pretty easy to keep track of everything as the tires were shipped, because I wanted to be able to relate this to you. And Cycle Gear literally called me within an hour of the tire's arrival. So FedEx dropped them off, they inventoried them, they brought them in, they figured out they were for me, and they gave me a call and let me know they were ready for pickup within an hour. And within the next 2 hours, I had gone and picked them up and had them in my hot little hands. You know, could verify they were the right tire and everything, look at their condition. And that's kind of nice, because things aren't being handled real well in shipping these days. You may have had an unfortunate, and that's a variety of shippers, not just FedEx. So it's kind of nice to be able to look at it. And if I had to decline delivery because something was wrong with them, then return shipping also would have been on Cycle Gear. So that's kind of something to keep in the back of your mind when you're ordering your tires. You can find tons of reviews for, you know, Pirelli Night Dragons, Michelin Commander 3s, Dunlops, Bridgestones, whatever, and make up your own mind where you want to go. I don't think we need to kick that dead horse any more than it already has been, with literally thousands of videos out there. What I do want to address is what I found when I was researching these Commander 3s. Originally, I stumbled on them. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And I've seen some, you know, high profile motorcycle YouTube channel people, you know, extol their virtues. And I thought, okay, this is great, but I am belt and suspenders. If you've been watching this channel, you know I really dig into things. So I started doing some preliminary review search through a variety of portals, including Michelin's own support site, their online portal, and there were some really negative comments, and it became a concern really quick. So what were those comments? And it's the internet, guys. Remember, you know, good news travels fast and it's shared by a few. Bad news travels faster and it's shared a lot more. And the problem with these posts, you know, these negative reviews that I found, is there was very little context. And sometimes it was somebody chiming in, talking specifically about the Michelin Commander 3 Touring. You know, the review thread was for the Michelin Commander 3 Touring, and they were talking about a size that was outside of the touring range, or it was actually the cruiser tire, or just some other Michelin tire they had bought 30 years ago. So you have to really, really dig in and sort through literally hundreds of reviews. Once I realized there was a story here, went through hundreds of reviews. So you need that context, that it's actually the tire model, you know, the brand and model that you're looking at. And then, you know, how long did these alleged problems span? And the problem that people are talking about is vibration and wobbling, specifically with the front tire. And there was a couple of mentions of the rear tire. And that's Harley is known to have something called the death wobble anyway on a couple of different models of bikes. That's been noted and remediated again and again over the years. So anything, I've never experienced that on this bike, but anything that affects the front end handling is, where you point the nose, the body follows. So you want to make sure that the thing's going to be right. And I didn't want to be introducing a problem. So in order to keep the data relevant, I went back to 2019 and I saw some posts before then, but again, it's just really, there wasn't any context with those posts to really identify, hey, this is it. And furthermore, there were only a couple of posts where they actually had everything together. So they had the date code on the tire. They talked specifically about who and how the tire was installed and balanced, and that it was indeed a Michelin Commander III Touring tire. So there was an immediate red flag in that it was quite obvious that several people had taken their tire somewhere to be installed, and it literally wasn't installed right. Like the bead wasn't seated right, the tire wasn't seated on the rim right, and or the tire wasn't balanced correctly. And they chased it round and round and had the same place remount it, and the problem didn't go away, or it eventually went away, or they took it somewhere else and had it mounted and balanced, and then it was fine. I found one instance of a gentleman that said he had bought the tires and was specifically a front tire. He couldn't get it squared away, and Michelin kind of apparently owned up that there was a problem, and they paid basically for a new tire, but he was out for mounting and balancing and remounting and balancing, the troubleshooting he did trying to remediate it. But that was literally one post out of all these hundreds that I went through. The others were, home installation, which in theory you should be able to do. My thought on that, and if you've been watching this channel, we're kind of thrifty. We like to do a lot of the maintenance ourselves, but I don't have a spin balancer at my house. Yes, I know you can use a gravity balancer, which is a balancer with two conical posts that go into the hub, and the heavy spot on the tire goes to the bottom, so you put the weight on the other side, or the old-fashioned bubble balancer. But modern tires are meant to be spun up to speed, like a specific speed, so that the tire is not bloated, but matured. If you've ever watched a drag racing tire, it gets bigger when you spin it up. You can see it on the videos of drag racing. Well, every tire does that to some degree. And when they spin this tire up, a couple of things are noted by the balancer. One, that the tire is actually seated on the rim correctly and isn't out of round, because that'll show a big throw out. But also you're getting the spot where the weight needs to be in reference to movement. So below 25 miles an hour, an out of balance tire is not as big a deal as a tire that's out of balance at 45 to 65 miles an hour, for example. So I choose to go ahead and take my tires to a place to have them out of balance where they have a spin balancer. In concert with that, I am due for my 50,000 mile maintenance, which requires the front forks to be rebuilt, for example. So the front tire's coming off anyway. So why not, rather than, take it apart, put it together, take it apart, put it together, just have it all done in one fell swoop. And yeah, I'm going to pay, a pretty penny to have the dealer do it, but it's once and done. And my idea of convenience is getting back on the road, and that'll allow me to do that. Back to the research. I really think that the issue with the rear tire is a non-starter. There just wasn't enough information in these reviews to say anything was wrong with the rear tire. And specifically, I'm talking about the 180/65 B16, so 16-inch diameter rim. The problem area seemed to be the front tire, and there were issues noted going back quite a ways, and quite a few of them. But as I started aggregating the information from all these comments, it really came down to basically a date code that was prior to 2020 on the tire, whether it was mounted and balanced correctly. And if those two items were met, then it seemed people didn't have a problem. And in the midst of all this, as I'm combing through all these negative results, I'm also finding a lot of people are like, hey, I'm happy. This is the best tire I've ever in my life, or this is my second set and I've gone a bazillion miles, you know. So there's always that give and take, and you have to be cautious, especially these days, because if you're looking for bad information, or not bad information, but bad news, you're going to find it. Somebody's going to be out there ticked off, right or wrong, misinformed, or whatever, you know, or it's not their favorite brand, or they think you should be driving on a different model of the brand, what have you. And it just takes a while to sort all that out. And that's the point of this video, is I actually did the research and went through that for you. So what information can I give you to help you in your journey? So the date code on a motorcycle tire is a 4-digit number. The first 2 digits are the week of the year. So the date code on my front tire for the new Michelin is 2421, which is the 24th week of the year 2021, which means it was made between June 14th and June 20th. The date code for the tire on the rear is 2621, which means it's the 26th week of the year, of 2021, which means it was manufactured between June 28th and July 4th. Why does that matter? What matters is I couldn't find anybody that said they had a date code at least as old as this, at least as new as this or newer, that was having the problem. The date codes were all like 2019 and earlier, or maybe even earlier in 2021. So either Michelin had a problem and sorted it out with their manufacturing facility. They don't make the tires in the US. I believe these were made in Taiwan, if I read the sidewall correctly. And situations like that with large businesses, it can take a long time to sort out. And obviously there's a lot of tires in the supply chain. So I mentioned earlier, I was looking for a place that had both front and rear in stock together, which seemed to be a problem. And I also wanted to order from somebody that went through enough volume that any of the older tires, any of those older date codes, would likely not be in their supply chain anymore. They would have the newer versions of this tire, you know, more newly manufactured versions of this tire from Michelin in their inventory. And that was one of the reasons I went with Cycle Gear, along with being able to inspect the tire and look at the date code when it arrived. If you go to your local dealership or motorcycle shop or somewhere where you're going to lay hands on the tire before you get it, you want to look at that date code, and there's YouTube channels and Google search results for how to determine the date code, the year and the month range manufactured. But if you rewind this video, we did cover it just a minute ago. So we're looking at before mounting and balancing, before tire disposal fee. I'm in an area where I don't have to pay sales tax, but it's $518.66. So that's a pretty big investment. By the time these are mounted and balanced and installed, we're looking at, you know, $800, $900. And I know lots of people, I don't want to get an argument about, you know, where you should take it for the cheapest installation and everything. Again, it's a matter of convenience for me getting back on the road, and I think it's worth the price to, for me personally, it's worth paying that price to get back on the road and have peace of mind and have a single throat to choke if something goes wrong. But that being said, before you enter into this with like buying them, you know, through Cycle Gear and then taking them somewhere, call the place you're thinking of taking the tires to have them mounted and balanced or even installed on the bike to boot, and find out if they will do it. Some places they'll do it, but they won't warranty the tire. They won't work with the manufacturer. If something goes wrong, you're on your own. And other places, flat out, if we didn't sell you the tire, we won't install it. And before you get your feathers all ruffled, remember, you know, they've got to answer to their bean counters and their lawyers too. And basically, they know nothing about that tire you brought through their door. It could be a recap, it could be used, it could have been bought from the gray market, you know, it's a cast off, somebody already knew it had a problem and returned it. They don't know. They can't necessarily be liable for that tire. So if you find your friendly motorcycle shop that's willing to work with you, that's great, but make sure you know 100% that they're willing to do that before you start the journey. Otherwise, you're going to be carrying around a set of tires until you find somebody willing to install them. What else do we want to touch on here? There are a number of reasons to pick this tire. One is these are specifically touring tires. Michelin knows that these are going to be put on a heavy bike that will likely be hauling, luggage and possibly be 2-up. And when I was looking through the specs for the tires and the reviews of the tires and people that rode like I do, I wanted to make sure that it was meant for a heavy bike, but it didn't have such a stiff sidewall that unless I did have it all loaded up with luggage and did have somebody on the pillion, riding 2-up, that it would be such a hard ride that it would be uncomfortable. And that really wasn't the case. From what I researched, was the tire behaved similarly at single rider weights with minimal luggage as to being fully loaded. So there wasn't any detriment either way, either being lightly loaded or being fully loaded. The tire still performed to most people's satisfaction. And that was ultimately what I was looking for. The other thing I was looking for, and again, I said I'm not a canyon carver or anything like that. A lot of it's straight line. I don't care how wide my chicken strip is or anything like that. I'm not looking to, enter into the King of the Baggers race or anything like that. The majority of my riding is, as from a total miles perspective, is going to be highway. And yeah, I do some back roads from time to time. So I also wanted to make sure that the tire was good for that. But I do ride in all kinds of weather. So I needed to know that the cold weather performance was going to be there, which is another reason to make sure that you buy the tire specifically meant for your bike. Like I wouldn't buy this tire and put it on a very light bike because I know I would get a bazillion miles out of it because, hey, there's hardly no load, because the tire is never going to warm to the temperatures at certain speeds and within a certain time that it would on a fully loaded touring bike. So there's the reason to get the specific tire. Like I said, I wanted it to be able to corner, but the other thing is, since I do ride distance and go on trips and I ride year round, it is as likely as not that I'm going to be caught in wet weather or a rainstorm or something like that. And I will say that the Dunlops performed admirably in wet weather. They inspired a bit of confidence, but not a lot of confidence. So I was looking for something that would be a little bit better in wet weather. And I'm not saying that I want to drive in a 4-hour thunderstorm, where there's inches of rain on the road, but I really don't want to have to pull over and lose half a day waiting for, a light rain shower to pass just so I can feel safe riding. I'd rather ride out of the storm. You're already wet. You might as well gut it out as long as it's safe to do so. And these tires, again, as far as I can tell, fit the bill. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and have the bike get its 50,000 mile service. We'll have the tires installed and we'll put a couple miles on them. They need to be scuffed in first before you can really get on it or lean into it. And once they're worn in and they're up to temperature, then I'll give a review of what my personal experience is, and we'll see if I do or don't experience this front end vibration. And I guess I should qualify that vibration a little more. It's been described as a buzz in the handlebars, actually a shake or a wobble in the bike, or even just an overall vibration from the people that had a negative comment. And again, it was kind of hard to tell who actually had this specific tire when reading those reviews. So the number where I was 100% sure they were referencing this tire was really low. It was maybe 1% of the complaints. So that leads me to something else that I wanted to mention. If you leave a review or a comment, please take the time to put in specifics so you can help someone else. Just don't say, hey, these tires, I bought ABC tires and it was the worst tire I ever owned. Don't ever buy an ABC tire. give somebody some context. Tell them you're riding a Kawasaki 1000 and you like to pull wheelies all day, and or I'm on a 800cc Honda Pacific Coast Cruiser. This is a scooter tire, and I ride almost perpendicular to the road all day, and I only go up 30 miles an hour. Or I'm on a full dress Indian tour bike, and I'm riding for 2,000 miles at a time. Give people the specifics. Let them know you checked the tire pressure. Let them know you had it professionally mounted and balanced. Let them know the exact tire size that you bought. Let them know what the date code is. Give people some information to work with, because then we collectively can crowdsource this problem and either help the manufacturer fix the problem or save each other from making the mistake of buying a bad tire. And that's what this is about. We're going to take you on that journey. All right, so it's been a couple weeks since the first segment was filmed, and we've had the tires professionally installed at a Harley dealership. Took them out, scuffed them in a little bit, and immediately noticed a night and day difference. And I realize we're comparing these new tires, brand new Michelin tires, to 5-6-year-old Dunlop Elites. But I will say that the feel and ride quality and comfort is exceptional. And I think more so than if I just had a brand new pair of Dunlop Elites, because I've already been through that cycle once before. So some of it is that, brand new tire versus the old tire you were on. But these things, even after being mildly broken in, handled and cornered quite differently as far as a feeling of comfort and responsiveness, but in a good way, I would say. And the vibration that was allegedly a problem and was noted as a problem for some people in some posts was, in my case, non-existent. Does that mean there was never a problem? No, but go back to what we were talking about earlier. There were specific date ranges of manufacture and specific circumstances regarding installation that may have been a contributing factor to the people that either truthfully or perceived experience that situation. So wrapping this up, I think the Michelin Commander III Touring tire is a recommend, and I would recommend them to a friend, and I would probably buy them again. I wouldn't buy them for a bike that I was only thinking of keeping a year or two, because they're about longevity. So if you're going to make that kind of investment, you probably want to make sure that you're going to keep the bike for a while. But what I caution people on, and I know I said it earlier and don't really want to harp on it, but the truth is tires are everything on a bike. They are your safety, they are your comfort, they are your ability to enjoy the ride, how aggressive you can be, how much mileage you're going to get out of them. And I won't say don't be cheap about it, because you can sometimes get a good deal on a quality tire at a decent price. Just don't go out and buy a tire that is poor quality just because it is low price. You're probably, if you have good tires but they're a little worn, you're probably time and trouble ahead just trying to get another season out of them, if you can safely do so, versus putting a crummy tire on there that has horrible reviews and doesn't wear a long time. I know that's easy for me to say. I've been in a situation where I didn't have a lot of money, and it was either some kind of new tread or none at all. And if the tires that you have on now are a safety issue, obviously you have to do something about it, or don't ride it. And that's where I fall on it. I won't go out and ride around on a tire that's showing threads. And if I can't afford a new tire, I'll just park the bike until I can take care of it. So I think this has actually wound up being a positive video. It really could have gone either way based on some of the posts that I was seeing, but this is why it's worth investigating, and why we'll make a video about this, because all this information that I included to help you, you could easily just say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on the tire, but without any reasoning why it might still be a good decision. So we went through all the research for you so you could make a qualified decision, put it that way. If you liked the video, please support us by giving us a thumbs up if you think we've earned it. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be alerted when that new content is put up. Ride safe. Namaste.